The emergency klaxon screamed through the corridors of the Zephyrian flagship Stellar Dawn as Captain Marcus Chen pressed his back against the cold metal wall. His standard-issue combat armor was cracked in 3 places, and blue alien blood mixed with his own red on the deck plating beneath his boots. The ship shuddered violently as another Vorthan warship's plasma cannon found its mark. "Human, you should not have come," whispered Princess Lyralii from behind him, her 6 delicate arms trembling as she held a makeshift bandage to her wounded side. Her crystalline skin, normally a brilliant azure, had faded to a sickly pale blue. The poison coursing through her veins was winning. Marcus turned to look at her, noting how her large, multifaceted eyes had lost their usual luminous quality. 3 days ago, he had been nothing more than a military liaison officer aboard this ship. Now he was the only thing standing between the Zephyrian princess and certain death. "Ma'am, with all due respect, that's not how humans work," Marcus said, checking his rifle's energy cell. "Nearly depleted. We don't abandon people who need help." The princess managed a weak smile that revealed her species' characteristic triple row of pearl-white teeth. "Your people are strange, Marcus Chen. The Galactic Council said humans were violent and unpredictable." "They're not wrong about the unpredictable part," Marcus replied, peering around the corner. The corridor ahead was clear, but he could hear the heavy footsteps of Vorthan soldiers echoing from somewhere deeper in the ship. But were violent for the right reasons. The Stellar Dawn had been carrying Princess Lyralii to the peace negotiations on Kepler Prime when the Vorthan Syndicate had attacked. The Zephyrian escort fleet had been overwhelmed in minutes. These weren't ordinary pirates or raiders, the Vorthans had come prepared for war. Marcus had been in the ship's small armory when the attack began, reviewing security protocols with the Zephyrian guard commander. The first impact had sent them both sprawling. By the time they'd regained their footing, half the ship's crew was dead or dying, and Vorthan boarding parties were cutting through the hull. The guard commander, a towering Zephyrian named Kethvar, had lasted less than 5 minutes against the Vorthan assault troops. Marcus had found Princess Lyralii in her quarters, already poisoned by a Vorthan assassination dart. The toxin was specifically designed to kill Zephyrians slowly and painfully. "The medical bay," the princess gasped, her breathing becoming more labored. "Dr. Vexani might have an antidote." Marcus nodded, though he knew the medical bay was 3 decks down and crawling with Vorthans. The ship's artificial gravity fluctuated again as another section was breached. Emergency lighting cast everything in an eerie red glow. They moved carefully through the twisting corridors, Marcus leading with his rifle ready. The Stellar Dawn was a beautiful ship when it wasn't being torn apart, its organic curves and bioluminescent panels reflected Zephyrian aesthetic preferences. But now those same curves provided perfect hiding spots for enemies. As they descended through a maintenance shaft to avoid a Vorthan patrol, Marcus couldn't help but think about how he'd ended up here. 3 months ago, he'd been stationed on Earth's orbital defense platform, just another soldier in humanity's small but growing space force. Then, the Galactic Council had requested human military advisors, and Marcus had volunteered for what he thought would be a boring diplomatic mission. The Zephyrians were relatively new to the galactic community, having achieved faster-than-light travel only 50 years ago. Their society was built around art, philosophy, and peaceful expansion. They had no standing military to speak of, just a few lightly armed patrol ships to deal with pirates. The Vorthan Syndicate, on the other hand, had been conquering and enslaving worlds for over 3 centuries. They were reptilian humanoids with a culture that glorified strength and despised weakness. To them, the Zephyrians represented everything they hated, a soft, peaceful species that had achieved prosperity without conquest. "Marcus," Princess Lyralii whispered as they reached the medical deck. "I need to tell you something. The peace negotiations, they were never going to work." Marcus paused in his scanning of the corridor ahead. "What do you mean?" "Intelligence reports suggested the Vorthans have been planning this attack for months. They want our star system, but, more than that, they want to make an example of us. To show the galaxy what happens to species who refuse to submit." A chill ran down Marcus's spine. If the Vorthans succeeded here, it wouldn't just mean the end of Zephyrian independence. Other peaceful species would see what happened and might choose to surrender rather than fight. Then, we make sure they don't succeed, Marcus said simply. The medical bay's doors had been torn off their hinges. Inside, equipment was scattered across the floor, and the walls were scorched by energy weapons. Dr. Vexani lay motionless near the far wall, his forearms splayed at unnatural angles. Marcus knelt beside the Zephyrian doctor while keeping his rifle trained on the entrance. "He's alive," he reported, though barely. Dr. Vexani's breathing was shallow, and green blood seeped from multiple wounds. "The antidote," Princess Lyralii said urgently. "He would have kept it in the secure storage unit." Marcus found the storage unit, its biometric lock still intact. "I need your palm print, Princess." As she struggled to reach the scanner, her hand shaking violently, Marcus noticed something that made his blood run cold. Her fingertips were turning black. The poison was accelerating. The storage unit opened with a soft hiss, revealing rows of medical supplies. Marcus grabbed several vials of clear liquid, each marked with Zephyrian text he couldn't read. "This one," Princess Lyralii pointed weakly to a vial with a blue label. "But, Marcus, there's something you need to know. The antidote, it only works if it's introduced directly into the bloodstream by a compatible donor." "What does that mean?" "It means someone else has to take the antidote first, let their blood process it, and then." She trailed off, her eyes meeting his. "A direct blood transfusion. But, we don't know if human and Zephyrian blood are compatible." Marcus looked at the vial in his hand, then, at the princess who was slowly dying in front of him. In the distance, he could hear Vorthan voices getting closer. "Well," he said, uncapping the vial, "there's only one way to find out." Before the princess could protest, Marcus drank half the contents of the vial. It tasted like metal and electricity, and immediately his tongue went numb. But, if there was even a chance it would save her life, he had to try. "Marcus, no." Princess Lyralii struggled to sit up. "If our blood isn't compatible, it could kill you both." "Princess, with all due respect," Marcus said, pulling out his combat knife and making a small cut on his palm, "humans have a saying, fortune favors the bold." The antidote hit his system like liquid fire. His vision blurred for a moment, and he could taste copper in his mouth. But, he remained conscious, and, more importantly, he remained alive. "Your hand," he said, extending his cut palm toward her. Princess Lyralii stared at him for a long moment, her multifaceted eyes reflecting the emergency lighting. "You would risk your life for someone you barely know? For someone who isn't even your species?" "Princess, where I come from, that's not a risk. That's just the right thing to do." She pressed her palm against his, and, immediately Marcus felt something he'd never experienced before. It was as if electricity was flowing between them, but, not painful, more like a warm current that seemed to synchronize their heartbeats. Princess Lyralii gasped, and Marcus watched in amazement as color began to return to her crystalline skin. The black veins that had been spreading up her arms started to recede. "It's working," she breathed, and, for the first time since the attack began, her voice was strong. That's when the Vorthan soldiers found them. 3 reptilian warriors burst through the medical bay entrance, their scaled hide gleaming under the emergency lights. They wore heavy battle armor and carried energy weapons that could punch through starship hulls. "The princess lives," hissed the lead Vorthan in accented standard. "Lord Vex Thor will be pleased. And, a human. Even better. 2 prizes for the price of 1. Marcus stepped protectively in front of Princess Lyralii, his rifle trained on the nearest enemy. "You want her, you go through me." The lead Vorthan laughed, a sound like grinding stone. "1 human against 3 Vorthan warriors? Your species may be unpredictable, but you are not immortal." "Maybe not," Marcus replied, "but we're stubborn as hell." The firefight that followed lasted less than 30 seconds, but it felt like an eternity. Marcus dubbed behind an overturned medical table as energy blasts lit up the room. His first shot caught the leftmost Vorthan in the shoulder, spinning the warrior around but not dropping him. Princess Lyralii, now moving with renewed strength, grabbed a surgical laser from the scattered equipment and used it to blind the second Vorthan. The warrior stumbled, firing wildly. But it was the lead Vorthan who presented the real threat. His aim was precise, and his energy rifle was military grade. Marcus felt the heat from a near miss singe his hair. Then, something unexpected happened. As Marcus rolled to a new position, he felt that same electric sensation he'd experienced when sharing blood with the princess. But, this time, it was different. Stronger. He could somehow sense the Vorthan's movements before they happened. Moving purely on instinct, Marcus spun around the table and fired 3 quick shots. All 3 found their mark, and the lead Vorthan dropped his weapon with a roar of pain. Impossible, the warrior hissed as he fell to his knees. How did you anticipate my attack pattern? Marcus looked at his hands, then, at Princess Lyralii. She was staring at him with an expression of awe and something else he couldn't quite identify. The blood bond, she whispered. Marcus, I think our species are more compatible than we ever imagined. Before Marcus could ask what she meant, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. But these weren't the emergency klaxons they'd been hearing. These were different. Deeper. Dr. Vexani stirred from his unconscious state and spoke in a voice barely above a whisper. Self-destruct sequence initiated. The ship's AI has been compromised. We have 15 minutes before the stellar dawn destroys itself. Princess Lyralii grabbed Marcus's arm. We need to reach the escape pods. But, Marcus, there's something else. Something I haven't told you. What? I'm not just any princess. I'm the heir to the Zephyrian throne. If I die, if the Vorthans capture me, it won't just mean the end of the peace negotiations. It will mean the end of my people's independence. There are over 6 billion Zephyrians depending on me getting off this ship alive. Marcus looked around the destroyed medical bay, at the dead Vorthans, at the weakened doctor, and at the princess who had somehow become the most important person in the galaxy. Then, we better get moving, he said, reloading his rifle. As they prepared to leave the medical bay, Princess Lyralii caught his arm again. Marcus, what you did today, sharing your blood to save my life, in Zephyrian culture, that creates a bond that can never be broken. We are connected now, in ways that neither of our species has ever experienced before. Marcus met her gaze and saw something there that made his chest tighten. Princess, I don't know what that means for either of us. But, right now, it means we survive together or we don't survive at all. She nodded, and Marcus noticed that when she looked at him now, her crystalline skin seemed to shimmer with an inner light he hadn't seen before. They left the medical bay behind, supporting Dr. Vexani between them, as the ship continued its death spiral around them. Marcus had no way of knowing that their blood bond would soon prove to be more significant than either of them could imagine, or that the Vorthans' attack on the Stellar Dawn was just the beginning of a war that would reshape the entire galaxy. All he knew was that he'd found something worth fighting for, and he'd be damned if he was going to let it slip away without a fight. The escape pod bays were 3 decks up and crawling with Vorthans. They had 14 minutes to get there. Marcus checked his weapon one more time and looked at Princess Lyralii. Despite everything they'd been through, despite the poison and the battle and the impending destruction of the ship, she looked stronger now than she had when they'd first met. Ready, Princess? Ready, Marcus. And, Princess Lyralii, you can call me Lyra. As they moved out into the corridor, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of something much larger than either of them understood. The blood bond between them pulsed with each heartbeat, and somehow he knew their story was far from over. The stellar dawn shuddered around them as they began their desperate race against time, and, in the distance, more Vorthan ships were moving into position. Whatever happened next, Marcus Chen was about to learn that saving one alien princess would have consequences that reached far beyond anything he could have imagined. Behind them, the destroyed medical bay fell silent except for the sound of emergency systems and the distant rumble of approaching doom. Ahead lay uncertainty, danger, and a galaxy that was about to change forever. The corridor leading to the escape pod bays stretched ahead like a metal tunnel of death. Emergency lighting flickered intermittently, casting dancing shadows that could hide an army of Vorthan soldiers. Marcus kept his rifle ready as they moved, Princess Lyra on his left and Dr. Vexani leaning heavily on his right shoulder. 12 minutes, Lyra whispered, checking the chronometer on her wrist. Her crystalline skin had returned to its normal azure brilliance, but Marcus could see the strain in her multifaceted eyes. The blood bond between them pulsed steadily, and he found he could sense her emotions as clearly as his own. Dr. Vexani spoke in a voice still weak from his injuries. Princess, there is something you both need to know about the blood bond you have formed.
Can it wait, Doc?
Marcus asked, pausing at a junction to check for enemies.
We're kind of in the middle of an escape here.
No, it cannot wait, the doctor insisted.
What you have done is unprecedented. In all our history, no Zephyrian has ever successfully bonded with an alien species.
The physiological requirements alone should have made it impossible.
Lyra shot a glance at Marcus. What are you saying? I am saying that your human friend is not entirely human.
Marcus felt the world tilt around him.
What do you mean, not entirely human?
Dr. Vexani struggled to explain as they resumed moving. The blood bond requires specific genetic markers that allow for cellular synchronization.
Humans should not possess these markers. Yet Marcus does. Which means somewhere in his ancestry, there is non-human DNA.
That's impossible, Marcus protested.
My family tree goes back 6 generations on Earth. We're about as human as they come.
Perhaps, Dr. Vexani said.
Or perhaps humanity's origins are not what you believe them to be.
Before Marcus could process this revelation fully, the sound of Vorthan voices echoed from ahead. They were speaking in their native tongue, but the universal translator in Marcus's combat gear provided a running translation.
Search every compartment.
Lord Vexthor wants the princess alive, but kill anyone else you find.
What about the human the sensors detected? Bring him too.
Lord Vexthor is curious about the species that dared to interfere with our plans.
Marcus held up a hand, signaling for silence.
Through the blood bond, he could feel Lyra's pulse accelerating, matching his own adrenaline surge. But there was something else, a growing warmth in his chest that seemed to be coming from her.
They retreated to a maintenance alcove as heavy footsteps approached their position.
Marcus counted at least 6 Vorthans, all heavily armed. His rifle had maybe 10 shots left, and Dr. Vexani was in no condition to fight.
Lyra, he whispered, can your people do anything unusual? Anything that might help us here?
She looked at him with surprise.
How did you know to ask that?
I can feel something through our bond.
Something like potential energy? Princess Lyra's expression grew serious.
Zephyrians have abilities that we don't typically share with other species. But, Marcus, if I use them, there will be consequences.
The Galactic Council has strict rules about telepathic and telekinetic species. What kind of abilities?
Think of it as controlled molecular manipulation. I can alter the structure of certain materials, but it requires tremendous energy and... She hesitated. It requires a bonded partner to share the physiological load.
Marcus understood immediately. You need to channel it through me. It could kill you. We've never tested this with a human.
Dr. Vexani spoke urgently from his position against the wall. Princess, with respect, we are about to die anyway. 10 minutes until the ships self-destruct. The Vorthan voices were getting closer. Marcus could see the glow of their energy weapons reflecting off the corridor walls. Do it, Marcus said, taking Lyra's hand.
Whatever happens, we face it together.
The moment their skin made contact, Marcus felt the universe explode inside his head. Energy flowed through him like liquid lightning, but, instead of pain, there was a sensation of completion he'd never experienced before. Through the blood bond, he could feel Lyra's consciousness merge partially with his own. Princess Lyra raised her free hand toward the corridor wall, and Marcus watched in amazement as the metal began to flow like water. She was reshaping the ship's structure itself, creating a barrier between them and the approaching Vorthans. But the effort was incredible. Marcus felt the energy drain pulling at both of them, threatening to burn them out from the inside. His vision began to blur as their shared life force poured into the manipulation.
Too much, Dr. Vexani warned.
Princess, you're drawing too heavily on the bond.
You'll kill him.
No, Marcus gasped, even as he felt his knees starting to buckle.
Keep going. I can handle it.
Through their connection, he felt Lyra's amazement at his resilience. Whatever non-human DNA Dr. Vexani had detected, it was allowing Marcus to channel energies that should have been fatal to a baseline human. The metal wall finished forming just as the first Vorthan soldier rounded the corner. Marcus heard the thud of the warrior running into the unexpected barrier, followed by angry hissing in their native language. "Impressive," said a new voice, speaking in heavily accented Standard.
But, ultimately futile.
The voice belonged to someone Marcus hadn't heard before, someone whose very presence seemed to make the air colder. "Lord Vexthor," Princess Lyra whispered, and Marcus felt a wave of genuine fear through their bond.
"Ah, Princess Lyralii. Still alive, I see. And you've acquired a pet human. How quaint."
Marcus peered around the edge of their makeshift barrier and got his first look at Lord Vexthor. The Vorthan commander was larger than his soldiers, his scales bearing intricate scarification that spoke of countless battles. But it was his eyes that made Marcus's skin crawl, ancient, intelligent, and utterly without mercy. "The metal barrier is clever," Lord Vexthor continued, "but my ship's sensors tell me this vessel will destroy itself in less than 9 minutes. You can hide behind your wall and die with the ship, or you can surrender and live to serve the Syndicate." "We serve no one," Marcus called out, checking his rifle's charge one more time. Lord Vexthor laughed. "Brave words from a species that has barely learned to leave their home system."
"Do you know what we do to humans who interfere with Vorthan affairs, little warrior?"
"Probably the same thing we do to reptiles who threaten our friends."
"And what might that be?" Marcus smiled grimly. "We eat them." The silence that followed was broken by Dr. Vexani's urgent voice.
"Princess, there's something else about the blood bond."
"Something crucial." "What?"
Lyra asked, not taking her eyes off the barrier she was maintaining.
"The bond doesn't just allow you to share energy. It allows you to share abilities.
If Marcus truly has non-human DNA, you might be able to access whatever abilities his heritage provides." Marcus felt a chill of anticipation.
"What kind of abilities?" "I don't know. But I can run a quick bioscan if you're willing to trust me."
Lord Vexthor's voice interrupted them.
8 minutes, Princess.
"My offer of surrender expires when this ship does."
"Do the scan," Marcus said, extending his arm toward Dr. Vexani's medical scanner.
The device hummed for 30 seconds before displaying results that made the doctor's 4 eyes widen in shock.
"Impossible," he breathed.
"Marcus, your DNA contains genetic markers from a species that hasn't been seen in this galaxy for over 10,000 years.
"What species?"
"The Architects. The race that built the original hyperspace network. We thought they were extinct."
Princess Lyra stared at him.
"The Architects were legendary for their ability to manipulate space and time on a quantum level.
If you carry their genetic heritage."
Marcus felt something stirring inside him, as if the revelation had awakened something that had been sleeping his entire life. Through the blood bond, he could feel Lyra's excitement and fear in equal measure.
"How do I access it?" "I don't know," Dr. Vexani admitted.
The Architect's abilities were said to be triggered by extreme emotional states or life-threatening situations. "Well," Marcus said, listening to Lord Vexthor's soldiers trying to cut through Lyra's barrier, "I'd say we're definitely in a life-threatening situation." That's when he felt it, a sensation like standing at the edge of a vast ocean of possibility. Through the blood bond, Lyra's abilities flowed into him, while something ancient and powerful from his own genetics began to stir in response.
"Marcus," Lyra whispered, "I can feel something changing in you."
The cutting sounds from beyond the barrier grew louder.
Whatever tools the Vorthans were using, they were making progress.
6 minutes, Lord Vexthor announced. "Perhaps I should mention that my ships are positioned to capture any escape pods that launch from this vessel."
"Surrender is truly your only option."
Marcus closed his eyes and reached deeper into the strange new sensations flowing through him. The bond with Lyra amplified everything, and, suddenly, he could perceive the ship around them in ways that defied explanation. He could sense the molecular structure of the walls, the energy patterns in the electrical systems, even the quantum fluctuations in the space around them. "I think I understand," he said, opening his eyes to find Lyra staring at him with amazement. "What do you see?" "Everything. The ship, the Vorthons, the space around us. And, I think I know how to get us out of here." Dr. Vexani looked skeptical. "The escape pods are still 3 decks away, and Lord Vexthor's ships, who said anything about escape pods?" Marcus placed his hands on the ship's hull and felt the ancient architect abilities surge through him, amplified by Lyra's power and guided by their unprecedented bond. He could perceive the fundamental structure of space itself, could see the way reality bent and folded around massive objects. "Marcus, what are you doing?" Lyra asked, though through their bond she could feel his intentions before he spoke them. "I'm going to fold space. Create a temporary rift that will take us directly to the nearest friendly system." "That's impossible. It takes massive ships with specialized equipment to create hyperspace rifts. Not if you understand the quantum mathematics involved. And, thanks to my architect heritage, I do." Lord Vexthor's voice carried a note of concern for the first time. "What are they doing? My sensors are detecting unusual energy patterns." Marcus felt the power building inside him, drawn from sources he was only beginning to understand. Through the blood bond, Lyra fed him additional energy while marveling at abilities her people had thought were purely mythical. 5 minutes to self-destruct, the ship's AI announced. "Hold on to something," Marcus advised, then reached out with senses he'd never known he possessed and began to tear a hole in the fabric of space itself. The effect was immediate and terrifying. Reality seemed to unravel around them as Marcus pulled energy from dimensions beyond normal spacetime. The metal walls began to sing with harmonics that existed on frequencies no normal ear could detect. "Impossible!" Lord Vexthor roared. "No single being can generate that much quantum energy." "You're right," Marcus replied, his voice echoing strangely as he manipulated forces beyond conventional physics. "But, 2 beings, bonded at the genetic level, sharing abilities that complement each other perfectly? That's a different story." The rift began to form, a swirling vortex of twisted spacetime that seemed to exist in several dimensions simultaneously. Through it, Marcus could see the friendly system of Kepler Prime, where the peace negotiations were supposed to have taken place. "Princess," Dr. Vexani said urgently, "the energy required to maintain this rift will kill you both." "Not necessarily," Lyra replied, and Marcus felt her certainty through their bond. "We're not just sharing energy anymore. We're sharing existence itself. The bond is evolving into something unprecedented." Marcus could feel what she meant. Their consciousness were beginning to overlap in ways that transcended normal telepathy. He was becoming something more than human, while she was becoming something more than Zephyrian. 4 minutes to self-destruct. The cutting sounds from beyond their barrier suddenly stopped, replaced by Lord Vexthor's angry commands in the Vorthan language. "He's retreating," Lyra observed. "He knows what we're doing is impossible, and he doesn't want to be caught in the dimensional effects." Marcus struggled to hold the rift stable while supporting Dr. Vexani. The energy requirements were staggering, but somehow the combination of his architect heritage and Lyra's abilities was making it work. "The rift is stabilizing," he announced. "But we need to go now. I can't hold it much longer." They stepped forward together, supporting the injured doctor between them. As they crossed the threshold into twisted space, Marcus felt the stellar dawn falling away behind them. 3 minutes to self-destruct. But they were no longer on the ship. They were traveling through a tunnel of folded spacetime, surrounded by swirling colors that had no names and geometries that hurt to look at directly. "Marcus," Lyra said, her voice strangely distorted by their passage through hyperspace, "something is happening to us." She was right. The blood bond between them was becoming something far more fundamental. Marcus could feel his human limitations falling away, while Lyra's consciousness expanded beyond typical Zephyrian parameters. "We're evolving," he realized. The bond, the shared abilities, the quantum energies we're channeling, it's changing us at the cellular level.
Dr. Vexani, despite his injuries, was documenting everything with his medical scanner. Unprecedented, he kept muttering. Absolutely unprecedented.
Through the rift, Marcus could see Kepler Prime growing larger.
But he could also sense Lord Vextor's ships in pursuit, somehow following their dimensional trail.
They're coming after us, he warned. Let them come, Lyra replied, and Marcus felt her newfound confidence through their bond.
We're not the same people who were trapped on that ship. The galaxy is about to learn what happens when you threaten someone under human protection.
As they emerged from the rift into normal space near Kepler Prime, Marcus realized that saving Princess Lyra's life had been just the beginning. The blood bond between them had created something the galaxy had never seen before, a partnership that transcended species boundaries and opened possibilities that would reshape interstellar politics forever. Behind them, the stellar dawn exploded in a burst of light that was visible across 3 star systems.
And, racing through the dimensional wake of their escape, Lord Vextor's fleet emerged into normal space with weapons charged and scanning for targets. The real war was about to begin. The orbital station around Kepler Prime looked like a massive flower carved from metal and crystal, its 12 petals extending into space to accommodate ships from dozens of different species. As Marcus guided their improvised escape craft toward the docking bay, he could feel the attention of every sensor array in the system focused on them. Unknown vessel, identify yourself immediately, came the crisp voice of station traffic control. You've just emerged from an unauthorized hyperspace rift in the middle of a restricted diplomatic zone. Princess Lyra leaned forward to activate the communications system. Her crystalline skin now seemed to shimmer with an inner light that hadn't been there before their bond formed. This is Princess Lyralii of the Zephyrian Royal House, requesting immediate emergency docking.
We have critical intelligence regarding the Vorthan Syndicate's military activities. The pause that followed was brief but heavy with implications. Princess Lyralii, our records show you were aboard the diplomatic vessel Stellar Dawn, which was reported destroyed 37 minutes ago.
Please explain your current status. The Stellar Dawn was attacked by a Vorthan fleet.
We are the only survivors, Lyra replied, her voice carrying newfound authority that made Marcus glance at her in surprise. Through their blood bond, he could feel her consciousness had expanded in ways that were both exciting and slightly frightening. Dr. Vexani, still weak but stable, spoke from the back of their small craft. Princess, you should know that the energy signatures we're generating are probably causing quite a stir among the station's scientists. Marcus checked their readings and saw what the doctor meant. The quantum effects of their evolved bond were creating measurable distortions in local spacetime. Any civilization advanced enough to monitor such things would be very curious about what they'd become.
Attention unknown vessel, traffic control said, you're cleared for emergency docking in Bay 94. Please be advised that Galactic Council security forces will escort you immediately upon landing.
Understood, Lyra replied, then switched off the communications array. Marcus, we need to talk about what happened during our escape. He guided their craft through the docking sequence while processing the complex emotions flowing through their bond.
You mean besides the part where I apparently have alien DNA and can tear holes in spacetime? That's exactly what I mean. The Galactic Council has very strict protocols regarding species with reality manipulation abilities. When they discover what we can do together. Dr. Vexani interrupted from behind them.
Princess, it's worse than that.
My bioscans during our escape show that your bond isn't just sharing abilities.
You're sharing evolutionary development.
You're both becoming something new.
Marcus felt their craft settle into the docking clamps and looked at his hands. They looked normal, but he could sense energy patterns flowing beneath his skin that definitely hadn't been there a few hours ago.
What kind of new? I don't know.
But the genetic changes I'm detecting suggest that your species and hers are not just compatible, they're complementary. As if they were designed to bond with each other. The docking bay doors sealed behind them, and Marcus could see armed guards taking positions around their craft. Most were standard Galactic Council security, but he recognized the distinctive power armor of human Space Force Marines among them. Looks like Earth got the message about our little adventure, Marcus observed. Princess Lyra stood and smoothed her formal robes, which had somehow remained intact despite everything they'd been through. Marcus, whatever happens next, you need to understand that our bond has made you a person of significant political importance. The heir to the Zephyrian throne doesn't form blood bonds lightly. What are you saying? I'm saying that in Zephyrian law, you're now considered my equal partner in all matters of state, including succession to the throne. Marcus felt the universe tilt around him again. You mean? I mean that if something happens to me, you could theoretically rule 6 billion Zephyrians. Dr. Vexani chuckled weakly. And, that's assuming the Galactic Council doesn't decide that your combined abilities represent a threat to interstellar stability. The airlock cycled, and the first person through was exactly who Marcus expected, Colonel Sarah Chen, his commanding officer and older sister. Her expression was carefully neutral, but he could see the relief in her eyes. Marcus, she said formally, you've caused quite a stir. The entire human delegation has been in emergency session since we received word of the Stellar Dawn's destruction. Good to see you too, Sarah. Behind Colonel Chen came an impressive array of officials, Admiral Reyes from Human Space Command, Ambassador Tala from the Andromedan Collective, and several others Marcus didn't recognize. But, the figure that made Princess Lyra straighten with formal attention was Chancellor Vorthan, the Galactic Council's chief administrative officer. Princess Lyralii, Chancellor Vorthan said in the precise tones of his translator device, we are relieved to see you alive. However, our sensors detected some rather unusual energy signatures during your arrival. Chancellor, Princess Lyra replied with diplomatic grace, I present Captain Marcus Chen of the Human Space Force, who saved my life during the Vorthan attack. Our survival required the formation of an emergency blood bond. Marcus watched the Chancellor's four eyes widen slightly. The moth-like being's antennae twitched in what Marcus had learned was a sign of surprise. A blood bond? Princess, such connections have been theoretical for centuries. No successful interspecies bond has ever been documented. Until now, Dr. Vexani said, struggling to stand. Chancellor, I have complete biomedical data on the bonding process. What these two have achieved may represent the next step in interstellar cooperation. Admiral Reyes stepped forward. Captain Chen, we need a full debrief on the Vorthan attack. Intelligence suggests this was more than simple piracy. Before Marcus could answer, alarms began blaring throughout the station. The lights shifted to emergency amber, and Chancellor Vorthan's translator crackled with urgent communications in several languages. What's happening? Princess Lyra asked. Lord Vexthor's fleet has just emerged from hyperspace, Admiral Reyes reported, checking her tactical display. 12 heavy cruisers and a command dreadnought. They're demanding we surrender the princess and her human companion. Marcus felt Lyra's anger spike through their bond, accompanied by something else, a surge of power that made the air around them shimmer. They followed us, she said, and her voice carried harmonics that seemed to resonate in dimensions beyond normal hearing. Chancellor Vorthan's antennae were now twitching rapidly. Princess, you're generating quantum disturbances. This is exactly the kind of ability the Galactic Council has protocols to contain. You want to contain us? Marcus asked, feeling his own abilities responding to Lyra's emotional state. While a Vorthan fleet is threatening this station? The protocols exist for good reason, Ambassador Tala interjected. Uncontrolled reality manipulation has destroyed entire star systems. Colonel Chan raised her hand for silence. With all due respect to the Council's protocols, we have an immediate tactical situation. Lord Vexthor has just transmitted a declaration of war against both the Zephyrian Kingdom and the Human Colonial Alliance. War? Princess Lyra stepped forward, and Marcus noticed that the metal deck plating beneath her feet was beginning to resonate at frequencies that created patterns of standing waves. Over one captured princess? Not just any princess, Dr. Vexani said grimly. Marcus, show them your bioscan results. Marcus looked at his sister, then at the assembled dignitaries. It turns out I'm not entirely human. My DNA contains genetic markers from something called the architects.
The silence that followed was broken only by Chancellor Vorthen dropping his ceremonial staff. Impossible, Ambassador Tala breathed. The architects vanished 10 millennia ago. They were the first species to achieve dimensional transcendence. Apparently they left some descendants behind, Marcus said. And, when I bonded with Princess Lyra, it awakened abilities that neither of our species was supposed to have. Admiral Reyes was studying her tactical displays with increasing concern. People, we can discuss the implications later. Right now, Lord Vexthor is demanding immediate surrender, and he's powering up weapons that could crack this station like an egg. What are his exact demands? Princess Lyra asked. Surrender of Princess Lyralii for immediate execution, surrender of Captain Chen for interrogation and experimentation, and formal acknowledgement of Vorthen authority over all former Zephyrian territories. Marcus felt rage building inside him, amplified through the bond until it became something that transcended normal emotion. The air around him began to distort as unconscious quantum manipulations responded to his anger. Not happening, he said simply. Chancellor Vorthen backed away from them. Captain Chen, Princess Lyralii, you must understand that your combined abilities represent an unprecedented situation. The Council has no protocols for beings who can manipulate spacetime through biological bonding. Then, maybe it's time for new protocols, Colonel Chen said firmly. Because right now, these two represent our best chance against a Vorthen fleet. Sarah, what are you suggesting? Marcus asked. I'm suggesting that the galaxy is about to learn why humanity earned its place at the Galactic Council table through military excellence rather than diplomacy. Princess Lyra looked at Marcus, and, through their bond he felt her reaching a decision that would change everything. Chancellor, I formally request immediate emergency powers as heir to the Zephyrian throne. Princess, such powers can only be granted in times of species-threatening crisis. Look around, she replied, gesturing toward the tactical displays showing Lord Vexthor's fleet. If this isn't a species-threatening crisis, what is? The Chancellor's antennae drooped with resignation. Very well. By the authority of the Galactic Council emergency protocols, I grant you temporary emergency powers. But, Princess, understand that these powers come with the expectation that you will submit to Council oversight once the crisis passes. Of course, Princess Lyra agreed, then turned to Marcus. And, as my bonded partner with equal legal standing under Zephyrian law, I hereby grant you equivalent authority. Marcus felt the weight of suddenly being responsible for 6 billion lives settle on his shoulders. Through the bond, Lyra shared her strength and determination, making the burden bearable. Admiral, he said, turning to Reyes, what's our tactical situation? Grim. Lord Vexthor has brought enough firepower to sterilize this entire system. The station's defenses are impressive, but not against a full Vorthen battle fleet. Marcus studied the tactical displays, his enhanced perception allowing him to see patterns and possibilities that others couldn't. How long until reinforcements arrive? Human and Zephyrian fleets are at least 6 hours out. The Andromedan Collective has ships closer, but they're not equipped for this kind of fight. Princess Lyra moved to stand beside him, her crystalline skin now glowing with obvious power. Marcus, through our bond, can you sense Lord Vexthor's intentions? Marcus reached out with senses he was still learning to use, extending his perception through space toward the Vorthen fleet. What he found made his blood run cold. They're not just here for us, he said grimly. This is a test run. Lord Vexthor is using this situation to evaluate galactic response times and defense capabilities. If he succeeds here, he'll know exactly how to attack every other peaceful world in the galaxy, Dr. Vexani finished. Chancellor Vorthen was receiving constant updates through his communication implant. Lord Vexthor has issued an ultimatum. Surrender the princess and her human within 1 standard hour, or he begins orbital bombardment of Kepler Prime's civilian population centers. Marcus felt Princess Lyra's horror through their bond, accompanied by a surge of determination that resonated with his own growing resolve. Then, we end this, Lyra said firmly. How? Admiral Reyes asked. They outgun us 50-1. Marcus looked at his sister, then, at Princess Lyra. Through their bond,
they shared a moment of perfect understanding.
"We don't fight their fleet," Marcus said. "We go directly to their command ship and settle this face to face." "That's suicide," Ambassador Tala protested.
"Even if you could somehow reach their dreadnought, Lord Vexthor has over 1,000 elite warriors aboard." Princess Lyra smiled, and the expression carried implications that made everyone in the room step back slightly.
"Ambassador, you're thinking in terms of conventional warfare."
"But Marcus and I are no longer conventional beings."
Dr. Vexani looked up from his medical scanner with excitement.
"Princess, the quantum evolution is accelerating. Your bond is still developing new capabilities.
In another few hours, you might be able to do things that would make the ancient architects envious."
"We don't have a few hours," Marcus replied.
"We have 57 minutes. Colonel Chen stepped forward.
"Marcus, even if you two have developed superhuman abilities, you can't take on an entire Vorthan dreadnought alone."
"Who said anything about alone?"
Marcus asked, looking around at the assembled officials and military personnel.
"This is what we're going to do."
As Marcus outlined his plan, Princess Lyra felt their bond pulse with shared determination and growing power. The galaxy was about to learn that sometimes the most impossible odds could be overcome by two people willing to risk everything for each other and the innocent lives depending on them. Through the bond, she felt Marcus's absolute certainty that they would succeed, and she let that certainty strengthen her own resolve. Whatever they had become, whatever they were still becoming, it was time to show the Vorthan Syndicate that some things were worth fighting for. In 56 minutes, the real battle would begin. The docking bay of Kepler Prime Station had been transformed into a war room in less than 30 minutes. Holographic displays showed the positions of Lord Vexthor's fleet, while technicians from a dozen species worked frantically to implement Marcus's plan. At the center of it all, he and Princess Lyra stood hand in hand, their blood bond creating visible energy patterns that made the air shimmer around them.
26 minutes remaining, Admiral Reyes announced, checking her chronometer.
"Marcus, are you absolutely certain this will work?"
Marcus felt Princess Lyra's confidence flowing through their connection, reinforcing his own certainty.
"Admiral, conventional tactics won't work against a Vorthan battle fleet. But what we become, it gives us options that Lord Vexthor can't possibly expect."
Dr. Vexani looked up from his medical scanners, his forearms manipulating multiple devices simultaneously. "The quantum evolution is still accelerating.
Your cellular structures are adapting in real time to handle greater energy loads. But, Princess, Captain Chen, you must understand that what you're planning has never been attempted by any species in galactic history."
"Then, we'll make history," Princess Lyra replied, her crystalline skin now glowing with steady bioluminescence that pulsed in rhythm with Marcus's heartbeat. Chancellor Vorthan approached cautiously, his antennae twitching with nervousness.
"Princess, Captain, the Galactic Council requires assurance that your abilities will not be used to destabilize interstellar relations once this crisis passes."
Marcus met the Chancellor's four-eyed gaze steadily.
"Sir, with respect, we'll worry about interstellar politics after we prevent Lord Vexthor from committing genocide."
Colonel Chen stepped forward with a tactical update.
"The Vorthan Command Dreadnought is maintaining position at the edge of the system's gravity well.
Long-range scans show approximately 800 warriors aboard, plus Lord Vexthor's personal guard unit." "What about their shields and defensive systems?" Princess Lyra asked.
"Military-grade quantum barriers, particle deflector grids, and enough firepower to level a continent," Admiral Reyes reported grimly. "Even if you can somehow reach their ship, penetrating those defenses would require abilities that transcend conventional physics," Marcus finished. Through his bond with Lyra, he could perceive the energy patterns of the distant Vorthan ships with startling clarity.
"Lyra, can you sense what I'm seeing?"
Princess Lyra closed her multifaceted eyes and extended her consciousness through their shared connection.
"Yes.
Their quantum barriers are based on harmonic resonance frequencies. If we can match those frequencies and, then, introduce a phase variance, we can walk right through their shields like they don't exist," Marcus confirmed.
Ambassador Tala's translator device clicked with concern.
"Even assuming you can bypass their defenses, you would still face Lord Vexthor himself. He is a veteran of over 200 battles and has never been defeated in personal combat. That's because he's never fought someone with architect heritage, Dr. Vexani said, studying his readings. Marcus, your genetic markers suggest abilities that go beyond simple reality manipulation. The architects were known for their mastery over probability itself. Marcus felt something stirring in the depths of his consciousness, as if ancient knowledge was awakening in response to the current crisis. Through the blood bond, Princess Lyra shared in this awakening, her own Zephyrian abilities evolving to complement whatever was emerging from his ancestral heritage.
15 minutes, Admiral Reyes announced.
Lord Vexthor is powering up his bombardment arrays.
If you're going to do this.
We're ready, Princess Lyra said, standing up from the makeshift command center. The energy radiating from her end, Marcus was now visible to the naked eye, creating aurora-like patterns that danced through the air around them.
Colonel Chan grabbed her brother's arm. Marcus, you don't have to do this alone. Let me assemble a strike team.
Sarah, this isn't the kind of fight where numbers matter, Marcus replied gently.
What Lyra and I have become, it has to be us. Together. That's the only way this works. Dr. Vexani handed them each a communication device.
These are quantum-entangled transceivers. They'll allow us to monitor your vital signs and maintain contact regardless of distance or interference. Princess Lyra attached the device to her formal robes, then looked around at the assembled faces, representatives from dozens of species, all watching two beings who had become something unprecedented in galactic history. If we don't return, she said formally, tell my people that their princess died fighting for the freedom of all peaceful species.
You're coming back, Colonel Chen said firmly. Both of you. That's an order. Marcus smiled at his sister. Yes, ma'am.
He and Princess Lyra moved to the center of the docking bay, where technicians had cleared a space for what they were about to attempt. Through their bond, they shared the complex calculations required to tear open spacetime while maintaining the quantum coherence necessary for targeted teleportation.
Ready?
Marcus asked, taking Lyra's hands in his own. Ready, she replied, and Marcus felt her consciousness merge more completely with his than ever before. Together, they reached out with abilities that combined human ingenuity, Zephyrian molecular manipulation, and ancient architect mastery over dimensional physics. Reality began to bend around them as they forced a rift in space that connected their location directly to the bridge of Lord Vexthor's dreadnought. The effect was visible across the entire system. Every sensor array registered massive quantum distortions as two beings created a stable wormhole using nothing but their bonded life forces and evolutionary gifts that science didn't fully understand. Through the rift, Marcus could see the bridge of the Vorthan command ship, a vast chamber filled with warrior scientists monitoring the approaching bombardment. At the center, on a throne-like command chair, sat Lord Vexthor himself. Now, Princess Lyra said, and together they stepped through folded space. The transition was instantaneous. One moment they were standing in the docking bay of Kepler Prime Station, the next, they materialized in the center of Lord Vexthor's bridge. Every Vorthan warrior in the chamber spun toward them with weapons drawn, but Marcus and Princess Lyra stood calmly in a bubble of distorted spacetime that made them untouchable.
Impossible, Lord Vexthor hissed, rising from his command throne.
The Vorthan commander was even more imposing in person, nearly 3 meters tall, with battle scars covering his scaled hide and eyes that burned with ancient intelligence. No being can teleport through quantum barriers. You're right, Marcus replied, his voice carrying harmonics that seemed to resonate through multiple dimensions.
No single being can. But we're not single beings anymore.
Princess Lyra stepped forward, her bioluminescent skin creating patterns of light that hurt to look at directly. Lord Vexthor, by the authority of the Galactic Council emergency protocols, I demand you cease hostilities and withdraw your forces immediately. The Vorthan commander laughed, a sound like grinding stone.
You think your evolved abilities give you power over the Syndicate?
Princess, I have conquered over 40 star systems. I have reduced entire civilizations to slavery.
Do you truly believe that two individuals, regardless of their gifts, can stand against the might of the Vorthan fleet?
Yes,
Marcus said simply. I do.
Lord Vexthor gestured to his warriors, who began advancing with energy weapons raised.
Kill them.
Their abilities mean nothing against superior numbers. That's when Marcus and Princess Lyra demonstrated exactly what they had become. Moving as one, they reached out with their combined consciousness and touched the minds of every Vorthan warrior on the bridge. Not to control them, that would have been a violation of sentient rights that neither Marcus nor Princess Lyra would countenance, but to show them something that made them pause in absolute shock. Through their evolved bond, Marcus and Princess Lyra projected a vision directly into the consciousness of every being present, the true scope of their abilities, the quantum forces they could manipulate, and, most importantly, the restraint they were showing by not using those forces to simply unmake every Vorthan ship in the system. By the void, one of the warriors whispered, lowering his weapon. They could disintegrate us at the molecular level. They could collapse the stellar primary and turn this entire system into a black hole, another added, his voice shaking. Lord Vexthor snarled at his troops.
Cowards! They are only two beings.
Two beings who have transcended the normal limitations of biology and physics. Dr. Vexani's voice came through their communicators. Lord Vexthor, our sensors indicate that Marcus and Princess Lyra are currently channeling enough energy to power a small moon.
They could end this battle in seconds if they chose to.
Princess Lyra stepped closer to the Vorthan commander, her presence causing the air around them to shimmer with barely contained power.
But we choose not to, Lord Vexthor. Because we believe that even warriors like you can learn to value life over conquest. You think to lecture me about value?
Lord Vexthor's scale features twisted with rage.
I am the heir to 3,000 years of Vorthan military tradition. My ancestors conquered the void itself.
Marcus felt a surge of something through their bond, not anger, but a deep sadness that Princess Lyra carried for all the unnecessary violence in the galaxy. Through their connection, that sadness mixed with his own human drive to protect the innocent, creating something that transcended normal emotion. Your ancestors conquered empty space, Marcus said quietly.
We're offering you the chance to build something better.
I need no offerings from lesser species. Lord Vexthor drew an ornate energy sword that hummed with lethal power. Face me in single combat, human. Prove that your evolved abilities mean anything against true warrior skill. Marcus looked at the weapon, then, at Princess Lyra. Through their bond, they shared a moment of perfect communication.
No, Princess Lyra said firmly. We will not give you the honorable death you seek, Lord Vexthor. Because this was never about honor. This was about innocent civilians who never threatened your people. With a gesture that seemed casual but contained the focused power of a star, Princess Lyra reached out and simply turned off every weapon system on every ship in the Vorthan fleet. Not destroyed, disabled.
The quantum fields that powered their energy weapons, the targeting systems that guided their missiles, the shields that protected their hulls, all of it shut down simultaneously through manipulation of electromagnetic frequencies that shouldn't have been possible.
Impossible, Lord Vexthor breathed, staring at his now powerless energy sword.
The universe is full of impossibilities, Marcus replied.
The question is, what are you going to do with this one? Through their communicators, they could hear Admiral Reyes reporting from Kepler Prime Station, all Vorthan weapons are offline. Their ships are defenseless, but they're not retreating.
Princess Lyra addressed Lord Vexthor directly.
We could destroy your entire fleet right now. Every ship, every warrior. But we won't. Because we believe that strength should protect, not conquer.
Then, you are fools, Lord Vexthor snarled.
The moment you restore our weapons, we will resume our attack.
No, Marcus said, and his voice carried certainties that came from sources beyond normal human knowledge.
You won't. Because we're going to show you something that will change everything you believe about power.
Through their bond, Marcus and Princess Lyra reached out with their combined abilities and touched the quantum structure of space around Lord Vexthor's fleet.
Instead of destruction, they began to create.
Using principles that combined human innovation, Zephyrian artistic mastery, and ancient architect understanding of dimensional physics, they began to construct something in the void between the ships, a structure of pure crystallized energy that grew and expanded until it dwarfed even the largest dreadnought.
What are you doing? Lord Vexthor demanded, watching through the bridge's viewports as reality itself seemed to bend around the growing construct.
We're building a monument, Princess Lyra explained, her voice distant as she poured her consciousness into the creation. Not to war or conquest, but to the possibility of peace. The structure they were creating was beautiful beyond description, a crystalline lattice that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, catching and refracting the light of the system's star into patterns that spoke directly to the aesthetic centers of any sentient brain. But, more than beautiful, it was functional. The monument was a quantum resonance chamber that could amplify peaceful intentions while dampening aggressive impulses in any beings within its influence.
You're manipulating our minds,
Lord Vexthor accused.
No, Marcus replied.
We're giving you the chance to hear your own conscience without the interference of cultural conditioning and ancient grudges.
As the monument reached completion, its effects began to spread throughout the Vorthan fleet.
Not mind control, neither Marcus nor Princess Lyra would stoop to such violations, but a clear, undistorted perception that allowed every Vorthan warrior to see their actions from perspectives other than their own. Through their communicators, they could hear reports from across the fleet, weapons being powered down voluntarily, warriors laying down arms, commanders questioning orders that moments before had seemed absolutely justified.
This is temporary, isn't it?
Lord Vexthor asked, his voice carrying a note Marcus had never expected to hear from a Vorthan commander: uncertainty.
The monument will last as long as needed, Princess Lyra replied.
But the choice to change has to be yours. We can show you alternatives to conquest, but we can't force you to choose them. Lord Vexthor stared at the impossible structure floating in space around his fleet, then looked at Marcus and Princess Lyra with what might have been the beginning of respect.
What do you want from us? He asked finally. We want you to go home, Marcus said simply.
We want you to tell your people that the galaxy is full of wonders worth protecting instead of conquering.
And we want you to consider that strength without compassion is just another form of weakness. For a long moment, the bridge was silent except for the hum of ship systems and the soft harmonics emanating from the quantum monument surrounding the fleet. Then, Lord Vexthor did something that no one, human, Zephyrian, or Vorthan, expected. He knelt.
In 300 years of warfare, he said quietly, I have never encountered beings who could destroy me utterly and chose instead to show me beauty. Perhaps the Syndicate has been wrong about the nature of true strength. Through their bond, Marcus felt Princess Lyra's joy and relief, mixed with hope for a future where such displays of power would never again be necessary. But, as they prepared to return to Kepler Prime Station, neither of them realized that their demonstration had been witnessed by observers from across the galaxy, and that some of those observers would see their abilities not as a force for peace, but as a threat that had to be eliminated. The immediate crisis was over, but their real challenges were just beginning. 3 months after the confrontation with Lord Vexthor's fleet, Marcus stood on the observation deck of the newly constructed Kepler Prime Research Institute, watching the crystalline monument they had created continue to pulse with gentle energy in the distance. The structure had become a pilgrimage site for beings from across the galaxy, all coming to experience what had been dubbed the miracle of Kepler Prime.
You're brooding again, Princess Lyra said, approaching from behind.
Their blood bond had continued to evolve, and now they could sense each other's emotions across vast distances. Her crystalline skin had developed new patterns since their confrontation with the Vorthans, intricate designs that seemed to map the quantum connections between them. Not brooding, Marcus replied, turning to face her.
Thinking.
There's a difference. She moved to stand beside him, and immediately the air around them began to shimmer with the harmonics of their synchronized life forces. In the months since they'd saved Kepler Prime, their abilities had continued to grow in ways that concerned as many beings as they inspired.
The Galactic Council meeting starts in an hour, Lyra reminded him. Are you ready for what they're going to ask? Marcus considered the question.
Through the wide transparasteel windows, he could see delegations arriving from across known space, not just the usual council members, but representatives from species that had never before participated in galactic politics.
Their demonstration had sent shockwaves through every civilization capable of interstellar travel.
They're going to want us to choose sides, he said finally.
The Unity Coalition wants us to join their expansion into the Outer Rim territories.
The Conservative Alliance wants us to submit to regulatory oversight.
And the isolationist faction wants us to disappear entirely. And what do we want? Lyra asked, though through their bond she already knew his answer.
We want to protect people, Marcus said simply.
All people.
Human, Zephyrian, Vorthan, even the species we haven't met yet. Dr. Vexani approached from the corridor, his forearms carrying multiple data tablets. His injuries from the stellar dawn attack had healed completely, and he'd become the galaxy's leading expert on cross-species biological bonding. Marcus, Princess, he said formally, I have the final analysis of your quantum evolution.
You're going to want to see this before the council meeting.
They followed him to his laboratory, a space that had been expanded 3 times to accommodate the exotic equipment needed to study their unprecedented biology.
The walls were covered with holographic displays showing energy patterns that defied conventional physics.
Show us, Princess Lyra said, settling into one of the specially designed chairs that could handle the quantum fluctuations their presence generated. Dr. Vexani activated his primary display, and Marcus felt his breath catch. The data showed not just their individual genetic profiles, but the way their bond had created something entirely new. You're no longer entirely separate beings, the doctor explained. Your consciousness exists in a state of quantum entanglement that transcends normal biological boundaries. When you're together, you have access to abilities that neither of your species could achieve alone.
But, more importantly,
he paused, manipulating the display to show long-term projections.
Your bond is still evolving.
At the current rate of development, within 5 years you'll have abilities that rival those attributed to the ancient architects. Within 10 years, you may be capable of feats that the galaxy considers godlike.
Marcus felt Princess Lyra's concern through their connection. What kind of feats? Stellar manipulation. Galactic scale teleportation. Possibly even temporal adjustment on a limited scale. Dr.
Vexani's voice carried a mixture of wonder and worry. The potential is extraordinary, but it's also what has the Galactic Council so concerned. Through the laboratory's communication system, Colonel Chen's voice crackled with static. Marcus, Lyra, you need to get to the council chambers immediately.
We have a situation.
They found the main council chamber in chaos. Representatives from 47 species were engaged in heated debates, while holographic displays showed military movements across dozens of star systems. Chancellor Vorthan struggled to maintain order from his position at the central podium.
Please. If we could have quiet for just a moment. Admiral Reyes met them at the entrance, her expression grim. We've got problems.
3 separate species have declared their intention to contain you both before your abilities become a threat to galactic stability.
Which 3?
Princess Lyra asked, though her royal training had already taught her to expect this kind of response. The hegemony of Keth, the Crystalline Dominion, and, surprisingly, a faction within the Andromedan Collective, Admiral Reyes reported. They're calling it preventive security action. Marcus felt anger building in his chest, amplified through the bond until the air around them began to distort. They want to imprison us for abilities we've never used aggressively.
The hegemony has been building containment facilities specifically designed to hold beings with reality manipulation capabilities, Colonel Chen added, joining their group. Intelligence suggests they've been working on this project since the day after Kepler Prime. Chancellor Vorthan finally managed to restore order to the assembly.
Distinguished delegates, we are here to address the unprecedented situation created by the bonding of Princess Lyralii and Captain Chen.
The floor recognizes Ambassador Kethdan of the hegemony.
The hegemony's representative was a crystalline being whose faceted body reflected the chamber's lights and patterns that suggested aggressive intent.
When it spoke, its voice resonated through harmonic frequencies that made most biological beings uncomfortable. Honored Council, the hegemony's position is simple. No single entity should possess the power to reshape reality at will.
The demonstration at Kepler Prime, while impressive, proves that these bonded individuals represent an existential threat to every other species in the galaxy.
A threat? Princess Lyra stood, her bioluminescent skin flaring with indignation.
We saved millions of lives. By displaying abilities that could just as easily be used to end millions of lives, Ambassador Kethdan replied.
Today you build monuments to peace. Tomorrow, you might decide that certain species are too aggressive to continue existing. The accusation hung in the air like a physical presence. Marcus felt the weight of every gaze in the chamber, the fear and suspicion that their very existence generated. "That's not who we are," he said quietly, but his voice carried across the chamber with perfect clarity. "We've had the power to end conflicts through force for months now. Instead, we've chosen to build, to heal, to protect." Today, Ambassador Kethdan insisted. "But power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. How do we know you won't change? How do we know that in 100 years, you won't decide that the galaxy would be better off under your direct control?" Ambassador Tala of the Andromedan Collective rose from her delegation's seating area. "The collective shares the hegemony's concerns. While we acknowledge the positive actions of Princess Lyralii and Captain Chen, we must consider the long-term implications of their continued evolution." "What are you suggesting?" Chancellor Vorthan asked. "Voluntary containment," Ambassador Tala replied. "A comfortable exile to a specially prepared world where they can continue their bonding process under careful observation, without posing a potential threat to galactic civilization." The word voluntary carried implications that made Marcus's blood run cold. Through the bond, he felt Princess Lyra's royal anger building to levels that created visible aurora effects in the chamber's atmosphere. "And if we refuse?" Princess Lyra asked, her voice carrying harmonics that seemed to resonate through multiple dimensions. "Then, we would be forced to consider more direct intervention," Ambassador Kethdan stated flatly. That's when Lord Vexthor spoke up from the Vorthan delegation's seating area. The former commander had undergone significant changes since their confrontation. His scaled hide now bore ritual scars that marked him as a peace-seeker in Vorthan culture. "With respect to my esteemed colleagues," he said, rising to his imposing full height, "you are discussing the forcible containment of beings who chose mercy when they could have chosen destruction. Have you considered what that choice reveals about their character?" "Lord Vexthor," Ambassador Kethdan replied, "your people's recent conversion to peaceful ideology hardly qualifies you to speak on matters of galactic security." "On the contrary," Lord Vexthor replied, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had commanded fleets in over 200 battles. "My people have spent centuries studying the nature of power and how it corrupts. Princess Lyralii and Captain Chen had the power to destroy my entire fleet, yet they chose to show us beauty instead of death. That is not the behavior of beings who seek domination." The chamber erupted into arguments as delegates began taking sides. Marcus watched species he'd never heard of declaring their positions on whether he and Princess Lyra represented salvation or damnation for galactic civilization. Dr. Vexani had been monitoring their quantum signatures throughout the debate, and now he approached with obvious concern. "Princess, Marcus, your emotional responses to these accusations are causing significant reality distortions. If this continues, you might accidentally prove their point about being dangerous." Through their bond, Marcus felt Princess Lyra working to control the cosmic forces responding to her anger. Together, they reached a state of calm that allowed the space-time fluctuations around them to stabilize. "Dr. Vexani is right," Princess Lyra said, addressing the assembly. "Our abilities respond to our emotional states. But that's exactly why the character question is so important. We could have used our anger to silence these accusations permanently. Instead, we choose to address them through dialogue." Chancellor Vorthan raised his ceremonial staff for attention. "Distinguished delegates, we must reach a decision. The hegemony, crystalline dominion, and a faction of the Andromedan Collective are demanding immediate action. Do we have any alternative proposals?" Dr. Vexani stepped forward. "If I may, Chancellor, I have a suggestion based on my research into their bonding process." "Proceed, Doctor." "Rather than containment or conflict, why not partnership? Marcus and Princess Lyra have demonstrated that their abilities can solve problems that have plagued the galaxy for centuries. The Vorthan conversion to peaceful ideology, the successful resolution of the Kepler Prime crisis, the quantum monument that continues to inspire millions of beings, these are achievements that benefit everyone." Ambassador Kethdan's crystalline form reflected skeptical patterns. You're suggesting we legitimize their power rather than contain it?
I'm suggesting we recognize that their power exists whether we legitimize it or not, Dr. Vexani replied.
The question is whether we work with them or force them to work around us. And what happens when they decide they know better than the rest of the galaxy what's best for everyone? Ambassador Tala demanded.
Marcus stepped forward, his presence causing the chamber's quantum sensors to register massive energy potentials that remained carefully controlled.
Ambassador Tala, with respect, that decision was made months ago on Kepler Prime. We had the power to impose our will on Lord Vexthor's fleet. Instead, we chose to offer alternatives and let them choose.
A choice made easier by the quantum monument that influenced their thinking, Ambassador Kethdan pointed out.
The monument amplified their existing capacity for moral reasoning, Princess Lyra corrected.
We didn't change their fundamental nature, we just cleared away the cultural noise that was drowning out their consciences. Colonel Chen had been monitoring communication channels throughout the debate, and now she approached with new intelligence.
People, we may have a bigger problem. Long-range sensors are detecting massive fleet movements from the Perseus arm. Something is heading toward the galactic core, and it's not using any technology we recognize. Chancellor Vorthan's antennae drooped with concern. How massive are we talking about?
Over 10,000 ships, moving in formation that suggests a single controlling intelligence, Admiral Reyes reported, joining the group.
ETA to the nearest inhabited systems is approximately 6 months. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in.
Marcus felt through the bond that Princess Lyra was already reaching the same conclusion he was. Unknown fleet, unknown technology, moving with obvious hostile intent, he said grimly. This is exactly the kind of crisis our abilities evolved to handle.
Ambassador Kethdan's crystalline structure flickered with what might have been embarrassment. You're suggesting that your convenient timing proves your value?
I'm suggesting that the universe doesn't care about our political debates, Princess Lyra replied. 6 months from now, everyone in this chamber might be dead unless we work together to address this threat. Lord Vexthor spoke again, his voice carrying the weight of hard-earned wisdom. In my experience, beings who argue about containing power while enemies approach their gates usually end up with neither power nor gates.
Dr. Vexani was already analyzing the new threat data.
Based on the fleet's trajectory and composition, they're not explorers or traders. This is an invasion force, probably from a species that has been expanding outward from the galactic edge for decades.
What do we know about species in that region? Chancellor Vorthan asked.
Very little, Admiral Reyes admitted. The Perseus arm has been considered too distant and dangerous for regular exploration. Most of our information comes from automated probe data, and even that stops at certain boundary zones. Marcus felt a chill of recognition as ancient knowledge stirred in his consciousness. Through the blood bond, Princess Lyra experienced the same awakening awareness.
The Devourers, they said simultaneously.
Every delegate in the chamber turned to stare at them. Chancellor Vorthan's translator device struggled with the harmonic resonance their unified voice had created.
What did you say? He asked. Dr. Vexani was scanning them frantically with his medical equipment. Their genetic memory is activating. Princess, Marcus, what are you remembering?
Marcus felt layers of inherited knowledge unfolding in his mind, information encoded in his DNA by architect ancestors who had faced this threat before.
The Devourers.
A machine intelligence that consumes entire civilizations to fuel its expansion.
My ancestors fought them 10,000 years ago.
And, mine helped, Princess Lyra added, her own racial memories awakening through their bond. The Zephyrians were among the few species that survived the last Devourer invasion. We went into hiding on remote worlds while the architects made their final stand.
What happened to the architects? Ambassador Tala asked, though her voice suggested she already suspected the answer.
They won, Marcus said grimly, but at a cost that essentially destroyed their civilization. The survivors scattered across the galaxy, hiding their true nature and hoping the Devourers would never return. Princess Lyra looked around the chamber at delegates who moments before had been debating whether to imprison them.
They're returning now.
And, this time, there are no architects to stop them.
There are us, Marcus said quietly. Ambassador Kethan's crystalline form had shifted to patterns that suggested deep thought.
You're saying that your bonding, your evolved abilities, this was all preparation for fighting an enemy that has been dormant for 10 millennia?
Not preparation, Dr. Vexani said, staring at his scanner readings in wonder. Evolution.
The architect genetic markers in Marcus's DNA have been dormant for centuries, waiting for the right trigger. Princess Lyra's species carries genetic memory of survival strategies from the last devourer invasion. Their bonding activated both sets of ancestral knowledge.
Chancellor Vorthan's ceremonial staff trembled in his grip. Are you telling us that this bonding was somehow destined? I'm telling you that the universe has a sense of irony, Princess Lyra replied.
The galaxy spent months debating whether our abilities make us too dangerous to exist freely.
Now we discover that those same abilities may be the only thing standing between civilization and complete annihilation. Lord Vexthor stood up from his delegation.
The Vorthan Syndicate pledges its full military support to Princess Lyralii and Captain Chen.
Whatever they need, whatever they ask for, they will have it. Ambassador Tala looked conflicted.
The Andromedan Collective, we need time to consider the implications.
Time is what we don't have, Marcus said, feeling the ancient architect knowledge organizing itself in his consciousness. The Devourers don't negotiate, they don't hesitate, and they don't stop. In 6 months, they'll reach the outer colonies. In 18 months, they'll be at the galactic core. What do you need from us?
Chancellor Vorthan asked, his tone shifting from suspicion to desperate hope. Princess Lyra and Marcus exchanged a look that carried volumes of unspoken communication through their bond.
Everything, they said together.
Every ship, every resource, every species willing to fight for survival rather than surrender to absorption.
And, in return? Ambassador Kethan asked.
Marcus smiled, and, for the first time in the conversation, his expression carried genuine warmth instead of defensive tension.
In return, we save the galaxy. All of it. Even the parts that were just now trying to imprison us. Dr.
Vexani was monitoring energy readings from the quantum monument still floating in Kepler Prime's orbital space.
Princess, Marcus, there's something else. The monument you created, it's resonating with the Devourer fleet approach. It may be more than a peacekeeping device. What do you mean? Princess Lyra asked. I think it's a beacon.
Or more accurately, an early warning system. Your unconscious minds used architect technology to create something that would alert you when the Devourers returned. Marcus felt the truth of that statement resonate through every cell in his body.
We've been preparing for this war our entire lives without knowing it.
Princess Lyra stood and addressed the assembly with the full authority of her royal heritage and newfound evolutionary gifts. Distinguished delegates, the time for political maneuvering has ended. We face an enemy that has conquered thousands of species across multiple galaxies. They turn living worlds into resource extraction sites and sentient beings into computational processing units. However, Marcus added, moving to stand beside her as energy patterns began to dance around them both, they've never faced a galaxy that has Princess Lyralii of the Zephyrian royal house bonded with someone carrying active architect genetic heritage. The air in the chamber began to shimmer as their combined presence started affecting local spacetime. Every being present could feel the power radiating from them, not threatening, but protective, like standing near a massive shield generator. We'll need a unified command structure, Admiral Reyes said, already switching into military planning mode. Species that have been enemies for centuries working together. We'll need technological integration on a scale never before attempted, Dr. Vexani added. Combining the best innovations from dozens of civilizations. And, we'll need faith, Lord Vexthor said quietly. Faith that two beings who could rule the galaxy by force will choose instead to die protecting strangers they've never met. Through their blood bond, Marcus felt Princess Lyra's absolute certainty about their path forward. The political questions that had dominated galactic attention for months suddenly seemed insignificant compared to the approaching darkness from the Perseus arm. 6 months to prepare for a war that will determine whether sentient life continues to exist in this galaxy, Marcus said, looking around at faces that represented every major civilization in known space. I hope everyone brought their best ideas. Princess Lyra smiled, and her bioluminescent skin created patterns that seemed to promise hope in the face of impossible odds. Because whether we win or lose, we're going to make sure the universe remembers that when the darkness came, the galaxy stood together. As the delegates began the frantic work of preparing for an invasion by enemies they didn't understand, Marcus and Princess Lyra stood hand in hand, their bond pulsing with determination and ancient knowledge that would soon be put to the ultimate test. The blood that had saved an alien princess had awakened powers that could save all life in the galaxy. But, first, they had to survive a war against an enemy that had already consumed countless civilizations across the cosmos. The real fight was about to begin.